Life often shifts on a single, silent axis, turning everything you thought you knew upside down in the span of a heartbeat. My name is Elena, I'm 54 years old, and for more than 2 decades, my universe has revolved around one person, my son Lucas. He's 25 now. We've been a team of 2, a fortress against the world, navigating the rough tides of life with just each other to lean on. It happened on a Tuesday, a night that felt heavier than usual. Lucas came home from a double shift at the warehouse looking like a ghost. His skin was pale, his eyes hollowed out by exhaustion and the stress of finishing his degree. He didn't just look tired, he looked defeated. Before I unfold the rest of this night, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It really does help more than you know, and if you're drawn into stories like this, I want you here for every one of them. Also tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Are you in a small town where the evenings fall slow and gentle, or in a city where the lights never quite go dark? I'm freezing, Mom, he murmured, his voice rough. I just need to crash. Our heating system had been acting up for days, leaving the house with a persistent, damp chill. The only room that held any real warmth was mine, thanks to a small space heater. Go lay down in my room, I told him. It's warmer there. Get some rest. He didn't argue. He collapsed onto my bed, still in his clothes. I covered him with the heavy wool quilt, watching his shivering subside. At first, it was just maternal instinct. I was the caretaker, he was the child in need. But as the wind howled outside, rattling the window panes, I realized how cold I was too. I lay down on top of the covers on the other side of the king-sized bed, just to read and keep an eye on him. But fatigue is a heavy blanket. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew the room was pitch black, and the dynamic had shifted. I woke to movement. Lucas, seeking warmth in his sleep, had shifted closer. He was no longer on the other side of the mattress. He was right beside me. In the haze of sleep, he draped an arm over my waist, pulling himself against my back. It was a gesture from his childhood, a reflex of seeking safety. I was surprised, but I didn't pull away. He was asleep, I reasoned. He just needed comfort. I lay there, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing against my spine. The room was so quiet I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. It was soothing, in a way, the feeling of not being alone in the dark. I told myself this was innocent, just a mother providing an anchor for her exhausted son. But then the atmosphere changed. It wasn't a sudden movement, but a slow, subtle shift in pressure. He moved closer still, his arm tightening around me, his body molding to the curve of mine. I froze. My mind began to race, wrestling with a sudden, confusing tension. Part of me screamed to get up, to leave the room, to re-establish the boundary. But another part of me, a part I was ashamed to acknowledge, stayed perfectly still. Then came the realization that shattered my composure. I felt a physical reaction from him against me. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I tried to rationalize it. He was asleep, dreaming, unaware of who he was holding. It was biology, nothing more. I tried to force my body to relax, to pretend I hadn't noticed. But as the minutes stretched out, the silence grew thick and suffocating. Lucas wasn't asleep anymore. His breathing had changed. It was too controlled, too alert. The heat between us wasn't just body warmth. It was something electric and terrifying. I was trapped in the amber of the moment, paralyzed by a cocktail of fear and a strange, forbidden curiosity. Lucas lifted his head slightly. In the dim light filtering from the street lamp outside, I saw him looking at me. His eyes were dark, searching, holding a softness and a hunger I had never seen directed at me. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. I tried to offer a reassuring smile to drag us back to the safety of mother and son, but my lips wouldn't cooperate. The silence only deepened. His hand, which had been resting on my waist, moved to my hand. He interlaced our fingers, his thumb brushing over my skin in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. It was such a small touch, yet it felt like a shout. I focused on my breathing, trying to hide the fact that my pulse was racing. I felt like I was standing on a cliff edge, looking down into a fog. This was my son, my Lucas. But in the dark, stripped of our titles, we were just 2 lonely people seeking connection. His hand drifted up my arm, a ghost of a touch that made me shiver violently. A flush of heat washed over me. He shifted, turning me gently so I was facing him. His eyes locked onto mine, wide and vulnerable, asking permission for something neither of us could name. Lucas, I whispered, his name barely a breath. I wanted him to stop. I wanted to run. But I didn't move. The magnetic pull was overwhelming. He leaned in closer. My mind went blank, logic utterly failing against the sheer weight of the moment. His hand came up to rest on my shoulder, his touch searing through the fabric of my shirt. For a second, the world narrowed down to the space between us. I closed my eyes, a war raging inside me. I raised my hand to push him away to break the spell. But instead, my fingers brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. It was a tender gesture, but in this context it felt dangerous. I opened my eyes to see him watching me with absolute trust and a terrifying intensity. We were suspended there, balanced on a razor's edge. Then, the spell broke. Lucas pulled back abruptly, as if he'd been burned. He rolled onto his back, rubbing his face with his hands, letting out a jagged, nervous laugh. "I'm sorry," he croaked, his voice thick with sleep and confusion. "Mom, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't mean to make this weird." The word hung there, weird. It was an understatement. I sat up, straightening my clothes, desperate to reclaim my role. "It's okay, Lucas," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. "We're both just tired. It's been a long winter. We're confused." He nodded, not looking at me. The shame radiating off him was palpable. Suddenly, the jarring sound of the doorbell cut through the tension like a knife. We both jumped, the sudden noise acting as a violent reset button. I scrambled off the bed, heart pounding, grateful for the interruption. I hurried to the front door, smoothing my hair. It was Mr. Russo, our landlord. He stood there in a heavy coat, a toolbox in hand. "Evening, Elena," he said, his breath fogging in the cold air. "I saw the lights. Just wanted to check that furnace pilot light. I didn't want you freezing tonight." Relief washed over me, cool and cleansing. "Thank you, Mr. Russo. Please, come in. We'd appreciate that." Mr. Russo stepped inside, stamping the snow off his boots. As I led him toward the basement door, I saw Lucas standing in the hallway shadows. His face was unreadable, stony. He watched Mr. Russo with a sharp, brooding intensity that looked suspiciously like jealousy. I felt a fresh wave of panic. Was he resentful of the interruption, or was he protective of the strange bubble we had just inhabited? Mr. Russo chatted amiably as he worked, oblivious to the thick tension choking the house. I answered him, playing the part of the normal tenant, but my eyes kept darting to Lucas. He hadn't moved. He stood like a sentinel, watching us. "There we go," Mr. Russo said, finally wiping his hands. "Heat should be kicking in now. Call me if it stops." "I will. Thank you," I said, practically pushing him out the door in my haste to close it. When the lock clicked shut, the silence rushed back in, louder than before. I turned to Lucas. "Are you all right?" I asked. He shrugged, his jaw tight. "Fine. Just didn't expect him to barge in." "He was helping," I said gently. "I know." Lucas muttered. He turned on his heel and walked into his bedroom, closing the door firmly. I was left standing in the hallway, alone with a swirling mess of emotions I couldn't categorize. I retreated to my own room, sitting on the edge of the bed where, moments ago, lines had been blurred. I knew we couldn't just ignore this. It wasn't something that would simply fade away. A soft knock on my doorframe made me look up. Lucas stood there, looking like a lost child again. "Come in," I whispered. He walked in and sat next to me, leaving a careful foot of distance between us. He stared at his hands, twisting his fingers together. "Mom," he started, his voice cracking. "I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm sorry about earlier. I feel messed up." I reached out and took his hand, a firm, maternal grip this time. "Lucas, listen to me. It's okay. We are two people living in a bubble. We rely on each other for everything: emotional support, company, stability. Sometimes the wires get crossed. It doesn't make us bad people. It makes us lonely." He looked up, tears shimmering in his eyes. "But it felt real," he whispered, the confession terrifying us both. "For a second, it felt like you were the only person in the world." My heart broke for him and for me. "I know," I admitted softly. "I felt it too. But feelings aren't facts, Lucas. We were looking for comfort, and we found it in the only place we had." He nodded slowly. In a moment of pure vulnerability, he leaned his head on my shoulder. I stiffened for a microsecond, then relaxed, wrapping my arm around him. It was a hug of reassurance, but it carried the heavy weight of the boundary we had almost destroyed. "I don't want things to be weird between us," he murmured. "They won't be," I promised, though I wasn't sure. "But maybe we need to change things. We need more than just each other." Just as the air began to settle, another knock echoed from the front door. We pulled apart instantly, the spell shattering for good. We looked at each other. Eyes wide, it felt like the universe was testing us. I went to the door. It was Mr. Russo again. "Sorry to bother you again, Elena," he said, holding up a portable space heater. "I found this in my truck, just in case the furnace takes a while to circulate warmth to the back rooms." I took the heater, the cold air hitting my face. "You're very kind. Thank you." As I closed the door and turned back, Lucas was standing in the middle of the living room. The interruption had done its job. It had solidified reality. The moment was gone. He looked at me, his expression sober, the haze of the bedroom completely gone. "I'm going to go for a drive," he said quietly. I think I need some air. Clear my head. I think that's a good idea, I said, relief flooding my chest. We need space, Mom, he said, his voice stronger now. We can't be everything to each other. It's too much. You're right, Lucas, I agreed. We need space. He grabbed his keys and coat. At the door, he paused, looking back at me. There was love there, deep and abiding, but the confusing hunger was gone, replaced by a sad understanding. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. See you tomorrow, I replied. The door closed and I locked it. I stood in the quiet house, listening to the hum of the furnace kicking on. The heat was returning, chasing away the cold that had driven us together. We had stood on the precipice of something that could have destroyed us. We had looked over the edge, but we hadn't jumped. And as I walked back to my room to strip the sheets and make the bed fresh, I knew that while our relationship had changed forever, we had saved it by pulling apart.